Welcome to Latissimus dorsi, part 2. Let's cover what we haven't covered, and let's start with how we grip the bar or how we grip what we're pulling in or down to our body. If you haven't figured it out by now, anytime someone asks me what is better, I always tell you variety is better. Notice how the knuckles are facing us right now. If the palms were the other direction and the knuckles were behind the bar, that would be another way to grip it. So there is no one better way. Variety is better. Also, we're going to talk about not only when we grip it on the inside, but if we were to grip it out here on the outside as well. The most common way you can see the difference between grips is when you compare a chin-up to a pull-up. Take a look at the hand grip here. Notice that the knuckles are faced away from you on a chin-up grip, whereas on a pull-up grip, the knuckles are actually facing toward you. When we do a chin-up grip, there's a little bit more bicep involved in the movement. Sure, latissimus dorsi is the main mover, but we can almost match it up, bicep versus latissimus dorsi, when we do the chin-up grip. So biceps are a lot more involved here. And when you take a look, we're going from straight to bent, and just like when you do a curl, going from straight to bent and you curl a weight up to yourself, we're doing essentially the same thing. We're curling our own body weight up to the bar now. That's why the biceps are a little more involved. When you do a pull-up, you get more latissimus dorsi involved and a little bit more of your forearm involved, along with some bicep as well, but not quite as much on the pull-up in comparison to the chin-up. Here's another look at it. Here we have a chin-up movement, okay, based on the grip. On this one, you can't really tell, but he's splitting the difference on his grip. His hands aren't this way, where he's got a standard pull-up grip, and his hand isn't this way, where he has a stand-up chin-up grip. His hands are actually sideways, almost like a hammer grip, okay? So he's really splitting the difference between a chin-up and a pull-up. I want to talk about two things here with this picture. First of all, let's talk about the grip. You don't want to go too wide, because once you go too wide, you kind of lose your power and there's a little bit of stress on your shoulders and you can't really go through a more full range of motion. So you have to adjust your grip based off of how wide you are. Okay, now that being said, the wider you go, you're actually working a little bit more latissimus dorsi in comparison to bicep. And keep in mind that if you flip your grip from a pull-up grip to a chin-up grip, it is more bicep involved. This gives a good example of a super wide grip. Also notice the straps that he has on here. When you start getting really heavy with lifting and your hands are having a hard time holding on to it, these straps help you hold on to the bar. They wrap around your wrist, they wrap around the bar, and then your hand wraps over it. So if you ever wondered what those are, that's what they are. But this is a good wide grip that is focusing on the latissimus dorsi with a pull down or pull up grip. This grip isn't as wide as the last one. You can see how his arms are not as wide out at the last picture, but I just wanted to show you what a super developed back looks like when you do a lot of back work. Here's a good example of a medium grip, okay, with a hammer. Okay, remember, anytime you grab it sideways like this, it's a hammer grip. It's not a chin-up grip. It's not a pull-up grip. It is a hammer grip, okay, because it's sideways. And he is not grabbing it quite as wide as even the last picture. And then over here, you've got the most inside grip that you see altogether. But either way, they're all working their latissimus dorsi and bicep with the pulling movements. Here's another look at the muscles that are being worked. So yes, we have the latissimus dorsi down here in the darker red. Those are the ones that are working the most. But some of those other support muscles that you saw across the back of the bodybuilder, those are right here. You can see how they are working as well, because they are also colored red. Not as dark red because they're not working as hard as these, but they are still working. Here's another quick look at a chin-up grip, even off of a machine. A little more variety for you. You can see how this person is using a rope, and again, you can see the muscles being used. I'm showing you this image for two reasons. One, because there's a little bit of variety. I'm showing you how sometimes people work from standing or sitting, wide grip or tight grip. But more importantly here, I want to show you form. Just like I talked about form in the last video, notice how these shoulders are being squeezed back. He's trying to pull his shoulders as close as possible to each other as he squeezes and pulls the weight back. That is what good form looks like at the back end of your lift. On the other end, we let it stretch us forward a little bit just to get a little stretch in there. But again, when you bring it back, you want to squeeze your shoulders as much as possible. Something I haven't covered yet on this video, which is covered in the video lesson, is once we are sitting on the ground and we're pulling in at this angle, for whatever reason, they call this a seated row. Picture the arms coming out. It's like you're in a rowing machine or a rowboat. Okay, you come out and then you pull it back in. And I think that's why they call it a seated row. Let me give you another example. All them. This now is a bent over, because he's bending over, one arm dumbbell row. Okay, bent over one arm dumbbell row. One arm because he's only using one arm. Dumbbell because he's using a dumbbell, and obviously bent over because he is bending over as he's doing it. But they still call it a row when you bring it straight in at this angle, at the perpendicular angle. This is another look at it, but I'm showing you this picture because she's just got such good form. Notice how her back is completely flat. Notice how as she brings it up, she's squeezing her back together. This is called a bent over barbell row. And I'm showing you this because this is terrible form. Anytime you don't see the flat back, anytime someone is arched over, and this is usually what happens when you first lift. So a lot of times it's really important that maybe you have someone videotape you during your movement, because if you do this, you start lifting heavier and you start jerking the weight around, and sooner or later you're going to really hurt your back. These days you see a lot of really creative ways where people work their back plus work their core with the variety of movements, and this is one of them. Here's another look at some variety. This is called a bent over T-bar row. And finally, last but not least, how do we stretch our latissimus dorsi? Well, we're going to make the muscle as long as possible by pulling our body over in the opposite direction. We take that muscle and really stretch it out. Here's another way to stretch it with a partner stretch. And my personal favorite is when you can hang on something and lean away and let your gravity pull you down, and you really feel it along the side of your latissimus dorsi and your obliques. And we haven't gotten there yet, but you really feel this stretch really well. And anytime you have a bar that you can hang on, it's another way to get it. Another look, but this time instead of grabbing with two arms, we're grabbing with one arm and just sitting back and let it really pull your latissimus dorsi. The same way you can get a lot of benefit from lifting weights at different angles with a lot of variety, you can get a lot of benefit from stretching with different angles and a lot of variety. Variety is good. We are done with our look at latissimus dorsi, how to grip and how to stretch, and the various angles that we work from. Now go ahead and turn your cameras on so that I can excuse you as soon as everybody's got their cameras on.